What's up, everybody? Coach Ben here. I'm at my academy, School of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, here with Jim from Jiu-Jitsu Magazine. What's up, Jim?
Hey, what's up, Ben? This has gotten very real. Shouts out to my mother. After having open heart surgery, a few weeks later, she's making all these masks. So I'm rocking my mask. What kind of son would I be if I didn't give what my mother gaveth? But moving on to jiu-jitsu, in this quarantine edition from Arcadia, California School Jiu-Jitsu, we were talking about the idea of the respect hierarchy in the form of belts. I don't know how it is in a lot of other martial arts, but at some academies, they take it very seriously. You do not ask a black belt to roll, out of respect. That's not the academy we came from. I mean, it's pretty much open source rolling. But what's your thought on that whole hierarchy?
So respecting higher belts is like a topic that I think has a lot of different parts of it. So let's just go over some of them first, and then we'll start with the one that you just talked about, Jim. So rolling, right? So rolling with higher belts, I think, is one of the many facets of respecting higher belts. There's also, and I'm not saying this is right or wrong just yet. I'm just kind of laying them out. Rolling with higher belts, rolling near higher belts. You know, there's like an expectation to move at times. Lining up by rank. And then also the last thing we're going to talk about is kind of like when that respect turns into something that is more culty or something that kind of transitions off the mats, and it can be toxic. So I have certain thoughts on this, but mainly let's start with just rolling with higher belts, right? So we came from an academy. Our professor at the time, Rodrigo, I remember this very, very clearly in our academy when I was a white belt. I would always ask Rodrigo to roll, like as a white belt. I didn't know. I had no idea. So I would be like, Rodrigo, let's roll. I would be scared to roll with him many times, but the days I felt, like I wanted to kind of,
Go hard.
Not necessarily go hard, but I wanted to get my ass kicked hard. So
Right.
so I'd ask him, and his usual answer to me, and I stopped asking because I just felt that his answer made a lot of sense. He always told me, let me roll with all my higher belts, and then I will get to you. I was a white belt. I was probably a spaz, and actually definitely a spaz, and probably dangerous to roll with. So Rodrigo used to always tell me, Ben, as soon as I'm done with my higher belts, we're going to roll, and that's that's how things were. So basically, I think that's a great thing to kind of go by if you're the black belt instructor, right? Give your students a reason, if you are a higher belt, or give the other team members a reason why you don't want to roll if there is a reason, right? So now the question was, should you ever ask to roll with higher belts, right? So I can't really speak for other academies, so I'm just going to speak for my academy, right? And by the way, one last thing to the Rodrigo story is I remember that Rodrigo used to be so lax about this, to the point where when a visiting black belt came to the gym, our members, our students, would ask that black belt to roll, and that black belt would be straight from Brazil and confused. The black belt would be like, what are you talking? And they would look at Rodrigo, and Rodrigo would like have to come in, but you're not supposed to ask a black belt to roll. But he would never told us this, because he didn't seem to care. He had a lot of logic behind why he didn't roll with the lower belts first, but he always rolled with the lower belts. It didn't matter if the lower belts asked him to roll, right? So anyway, at my academy, right, I always say this: anybody should be able to ask anybody to roll, but anybody should have the ability to turn down that roll should they have any reason whatsoever. It could just be, they're not feeling too great today and they don't want to roll with somebody heavy. They don't want to roll with higher belts today because they're working on something else, or they only want to roll with higher belts today because they want to work on their defense. So as long as there's a rhyme or a reason, I think anybody should be able to ask anybody, to roll. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, and I'll just say that I concur completely with the picture that you painted with rolling at Rodrigo's, because it's so true. we weren't necessarily, it wasn't a big thing. Everyone asked everyone to roll, and that line that you said that he would answer with was totally factual. And it wasn't until I think I was maybe a blue belt or something when I was visiting other academies, and I would come back and I would tell them, you know, that the situation, like I asked so-and-so to roll. I'm like, and then I guess I heard it from another academy. I wasn't supposed to do that. And then I asked him about it, and he had that same response. It's like, yeah, you know, you're not really supposed to, traditionally speaking. He's all, I don't really follow that. And as far as to the logic that he rolled with his higher belts first is so we can get him when he was fresher and give them better rolls and more technical rolls. And then by the time he got to his white belts, you know, he had already given the good work to a lot of the higher belts.
Yeah, well, let's just be honest. A lot of the reasons why a black belt, and I'm in this position now, a lot of the reasons why a black belt would roll with their higher belts first is because you want to be fresh when you're rolling with the toughest people in the room, you know, especially if you plan on rolling and, you know, teaching, right? Teaching takes a lot out of you. So you're already exhausted usually by the time rolling starts. At least I am. So when I roll, I want to, you know, I want to do well. You know, I want to do well with my higher ranked students. I want to be fresh and you're right, give them the best looks, but also for myself, right? I want to, you know, I don't want to be in a position where I'm gassed against, you know, one of my purple belts that you know competes, right? So there are times when I need to be in that position. Like if I'm getting ready for competition, then, you know, we might throw a Shark Tank in and then I'll set that situation up. But if it's just a regular night of training, you know, you kind of, as a black belt, you kind of go down the line, right? You don't start with a white belt and then you go to the purple belt. That's not really how it works. So like I was just saying earlier about rolling with higher belts, right? You should absolutely have the ability to ask a higher belt to roll. It's really just the intention, your intent and how you're asking.
Bingo.
That's the more important part, right?
Bingo.
So if you ask somebody and you say it in a way that's like, obviously you're trying to challenge them. Like if you say, hey, let's roll, you know, let's roll, and then you have a snarl, right? This is not good. This is not. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with belts at that point. It's just you're just not.
Decency.
You're trying to roll with bad intentions here. You're testing yourself, and you're making it known that you're testing yourself against another person, and that's not good. You should just keep that to yourself. You know how I would ask. Let's say if I was a blue belt and there was a black belt in the room, I would say, "Would you mind rolling with me, sir?" Or you know, can we? You know, I would actually have some timidness in my voice just to show that, you know, I'm kind of, you know. I'm going out on a limb here. You know, I would, you know, I usually say it like this. If I am a black belt, so it's kind of weird for me to even talk about this because I haven't been in this situation for a long time. It's been like 5-6 years now. So when I go to other academies and there's other black belts, I usually just say, hey, would you like to move around, sir? You know, or you know, if it's a woman or something, you know, would you like to move around with me? You know, I just try not to call it like, you know, would you like to roll? You know, would you like to? You want to spar. It's kind of like the wording. I try to be as disarming as possible, you know. And you know, this isn't for everybody, right? But one of the things I like to do, not at my own academy, obviously, because everybody knows me, is if I'm at another academy and I'm rolling with, you know, another black belt or something, I just let them kind of do what they want in the first minute. I mean, if they tap me, whatever. But then I try not to meet them head on. You know, because that's usually how you create an aggro roll.
And that is not jiu-jitsu in its essence, right?
That is competition jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. If you want to compete, whoever gets the first win, whether it's, you know, stepping into a headquarters position or you know, establishing their guard, that is the most important in competition. But we're just talking about training. You know, in competition, oh yeah, I'm not going to give you an inch. You know, I'm not your first grip. I'm ripping it off. You establish a guard. I'm ripping my legs out. You know, it's like training though is different, right? So we're kind of talking about training, right? Rolling. Most of the people that listen to this probably are not competitors.
Visiting academies and just the environment and the culture within academies, and just really talking about it, not even necessarily judging it, but just talking about these issues because, you know, both of us, we've been through this mental gymnastics of, do we ask? Shouldn't we ask? This discussion that you're presenting is exactly that, just a discussion of
Yeah.
it exists.
Yeah.
So here's some thoughts on it,
Yeah.
right?
Generally, I would say try not to ask higher belts, because what happens is you don't know what their take on everything is, because they may be offended, and then now you're just put yourself in a little bit of a situation, right? So I would personally not ask higher belts. I would kind of linger in their general vicinity and see if they ask me, and if they don't ask me, then maybe I'm a spaz. Maybe they don't want to roll. Maybe I'm the guy in the room that people don't want to roll with, right? And if you're that person, you're that person, all right? So anyway.
Well, let me pose a question
go ahead.
before we move on. And to that point, actually, you mentioned earlier about the intent of someone seething and hey sir, would you like to roll? And you just you see it, they got a little hint of crazy eye, right?
Oh yeah.
Now to that. What if the higher belt, let's say he's purple belt, just got his ass handed to him by a fellow purple belt or maybe brown or black belts. Now he asks the lower ranking belt. He needs to vent this aggression. He just got handled. Now he wants to be the hammer. What is the protocol of declining a roll?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one, because if you decline a roll with a higher belt, generally that is looked down upon in the jiu-jitsu community. I would say you should have the ability to, but it's rough because they have the seniority and they have the kind of, at least on the mats, they have the, I don't want to use the word superiority, but it's like they have put more time in. They have earned a level of respect that unless you're injured, you should entertain them. But at the same time, if you're injured, there's just definitely different scenarios, right?
Yeah,
if I was a higher belt,
I would say let's replace that term, not superiority, but seniority.
Seniority is the better term.
Yeah.
But again, at some academies, seniority is superiority.
Okay.
Right? I try to coach that out of my academy, but let's be honest, at certain academies, we'll get to some of the more toxic things, but this is just the beginning, right? Rolling with higher belts is just one thing. I would say, yes, you should be able to, like if I ask my student, hey, would you like to roll today? I would like a reason. It just has to be a reason, right? If my student says, hey, you go too hard, I would be like, well, that's a weird thing because I don't think I do, but let me think about that. And then, there's just certain ways to kind of go about this. Now, if my student says, I hurt or I'm injured or something, then of course, then we're not even going to talk again. Then I'm actually going to see what injury he has and see if I'm a strength coach, so I kind of can help him with that. So I'm actually thinking about other things, but it's a weird one. I don't know. What do you think about that, Jim?
It is a weird one, but at the end of the day, people have life outside of jiu-jitsu, and if you can't comfortably decline a roll from time to time. And when I say this, I assume everything's on the up and up.
I've never declined a roll with a higher belt in my life. Have you?
I mean, there may have been. I don't. My problem is I don't generally decline rolls. Period. And that's a problem with me. That's for a different episode.
Yeah, I don't think I decline rolls either. I've never declined. I mean,
no.
Unless I was injured, there's never a time where I've declined a roll. So yeah, I guess there's a certain bit of macho-ness there too. But.
Yeah, but to wrap up my answer is I think if you're ever in an environment where no doesn't really mean no, or you feel that uncomfortable, you need to check the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What's going on at that academy. Like if it's an individual, all fair, because every group has that guy that everyone is like, no, I can't.
It's all intent again, right? So if I'm teaching class and I ask my student to roll when it's time to roll and they say no, my intent is I'm genuinely curious as to why. What happened? Are you hurt? Is it you don't want to roll with bigger people? I'm on the bigger side. Is there a reason? Are you just working on something? I mean, it never happens in my academy because that's not the culture. There's no. I don't think anybody would ever turn down a roll with anybody unless it's something based on like extreme size discrepancy or injury. But yeah, I think it's just a tough question. I don't really know how to answer this one because I generally like I'm like you. I've never turned down. I don't think I've ever turned down a roll. I can't really think of a time. I mean, I don't care if John Jones asked me to roll. Yeah, I'm gonna at least entertain it.
We're gonna roll.
We're gonna roll.
We're gonna roll.
So I mean, all right. So let's move on from rolling, right? So I think rolling, we've just established that it's all about the intention of both sides, right? If it's just it's a good intent, then say what's on your mind.
Absolutely.
You know? So now, what about this, Jim? What about when you're rolling and you're near higher belts, right? Should you be yielding space to them?
Great question. Yes. My answer, and this is where I do draw a line. Yes. Yield to the higher rank.
Okay.
It's just I think it's a very jiu-jitsu mats, no matter how large they are, they have this innate ability to draw everyone to the same area. It's so bizarre.
It's the center usually.
Yeah, usually the center. It's the most bizarre thing.
So I have a differing opinion.
Okay.
Which probably isn't that far off, but the reason I have a differing opinion is this. Or let me just tell you what we do at my academy first, and you'll get my opinion out of it. So in my academy, we all start rolling live sparring at a specific area, correct? Everybody does in every academy, right? So we kind of have a general understanding of what our area is, right? So it doesn't matter if I'm rolling with another black belt. Me and you could be rolling, right? And we exit our area into another two people's area, right? Another pair's area. And we are grossly outside of our area now, to the point where our area is now empty, but we have encroached on their training space. At my academy anyway, it is up to whoever left their area. It doesn't matter what belt you are, okay? You could be two black belts, you could be two red belts. We bump into each other. Those people should move back to their area. Now, when do the belts matter at my academy when it comes to yielding space or bumping into each other is when, let's say me and you are rolling and then two white belts are rolling next to us and we're both in our respective areas and we both kind of collide together. They didn't really exit their area, we didn't exit our area, but we have just kind of collided. You know, we've kind of both exited a little bit, or we're both on the fringe. At that point, we've both exited our area. We don't know, who's at fault here. So now the higher belt gets the space. Now it's up to the lower belts to move because we need a tiebreaker, right? What better way to use a tiebreaker than belt color or seniority, right? I don't really like it when it's just established on the mats that if you are a higher belt, you're gonna move. People are gonna move for you because, I mean, what if I start in that corner over there and then me and you are rolling and we end up in this corner? So everybody in the process of us going to that area needs to get the hell out of our way and yield. I think that's not fair treatment. That's like kind of, you are acting superior at that point. And I've been in a lot of competition rooms where everybody's a black belt. So what do you do then? What if everybody's a black belt and we're training on the same mat? Then what? Then there's, then you have to go by who bumps into who, right? Because everybody's even.
Right.
So that's how I do it at my academy. Yeah. So what do you think?
Man, you stumped me on that last one. That one's a good one. I generally, I just go straight to the belt ranking.
You just go straight to the
yield to the higher belts, right. And then
what if they moved all the way across the room and are egregious with their space?
The black belts?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, and that's a very good point. To that point, I would say there is some responsibility. Just because it's yield to the higher belts, that is not to say that black belts, our higher ranking belts, shouldn't be cognitive of their area and make a good attempt to stay in the realm. But other than that, even in said scenario, sorry, lower belts, got to move. But it is then that's when it kind of becomes, okay, your higher belts, kind of a dick move. Yeah. If that's a frequent occurrence. When you go from one side of the mat to the other, that's pretty, come on, man. Share the mat.
We kind of agree on this, but at the same point, I have a small disagreement, is because of this slippery slope can go far. Sure. So let's say let's say on the mats, certain higher belts have special privileges, right? So that's a special privilege. I can see that kind of creates a culty hierarchy that I don't really like, at least at my academy. I don't want that type of hierarchy. I want the hierarchy based off of respect for seniority, not respect for, belt colors getting special privileges. Or seniority shouldn't lead to, what I mean is this, seniority shouldn't lead to special privileges. People should see your seniority or your belt color and treat you with respect based on the work you've put in.
Sure.
If you're a white belt and you don't respect the purple belt's time in the game, the amount of time that they've put into this game, that's on you, right? There should be some extra respect there because that person is your senpai, is your senior. You should give them a little extra respect. That doesn't mean, though, that they should have privileges that don't make any damn sense. Like, I would say, if they're bumping into you, right, and you're rolling with the lower belt or whatever, you shouldn't have to be the one to constantly move. And it gets crazy because, I just think that takes this respect, respecting higher belts thing into a toxic and culty direction if you're just not cognizant of what can happen, with that line of thinking.
Yeah, and I will add this. Although I feel I have the view that I feel, I do feel that anyone who really makes such a hard line out of that, it does fall into that culty category. And again, it's not outside of me as a black belt to stop whoever I'm rolling with and yield that space to lower belts. Not saying that I would never do it.
When I first started my academy about 5 years ago, we did have that where because I didn't know any better. I just was like, all right, we're moving. If you get in my way, you're moving. If you get into brown belt's way, you're moving. If you're a white belt, but I guess I just didn't. At the end of the day, I thought about it and I was like, it just leads down a path that I don't want to lead down. And I had a thought on this, but I kind of forgot it. Maybe it'll come back to me later. But it's just something that one way could possibly lead to a bad outcome, and the other way, it's like it's a meritocracy. It kind of makes it makes sense. It's like we don't treat the white belt any different from the black belt, but there is a little bit of seniority that the black belt deserves. When they collide. Right? They collide, okay. Black belt gets the space, white belts or anybody that's not a black belt moves along, right? Because it just and this is the one thing that I forgot and that I just remembered is I want to get rid of this at my academy mainly because when I would bump into people, right? Let's say I'm rolling with somebody and there's a white belt and a blue belt next to me. I would never say anything, but my students would say something. Like people that were watching or in another role, they would say, hey, you got to move for Professor Ben. He's the black belt. I didn't like that. I thought that was like a weird thing. It was almost like you're training your students to be like kind of defend your honor type of thing. I felt that was super culty, kind of weird. So I hated it when my students would say, hey, you got to move for Professor. You got to move for the black belt. And it would usually be said in a nice way. But there were times where people would be like, hey, you got to move. Don't you know any better? It just got a little – I don't want that at all, right? So why not just take that whole possibility of that scenario out of play by just implementing these rules? And I would say probably like a year ago I just said, you know what, this is how we're going to do it. And this was after me training, in some competition rooms with all black belts. Like, what else are you going to do? So, yeah. All right. We're almost done. I have a couple more. This is also – in respect to higher belts, of course, is lining up by rank, right? So I think lining up by rank is a tradition, right? It's a custom. It's a direct show of hierarchy, right? So that is dangerous in certain aspects, right? Cults have hierarchies as well. But again, organizations have hierarchies too, org chart, right? So, I think lining up by rank, there's nothing wrong with it. What do you think?
Absolutely not. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think you nailed it. It's a display of hierarchy, and that's all it is a display. And it's almost like, you earned your seat at the table.
Yeah.
You earned it. This is how much so-and-so put in work. It doesn't mean anyone's tougher than the next person.
It just shows seniority.
It just shows seniority, and that you've put in, like, person A has put in that much time into the art, into the community.
It's like stripes, right? It shows progress. It shows progress, and it gives people, I guess, external motivation, right? Which I don't think is all that great sometimes, but I would say external motivation kept me in jiu-jitsu. If it wasn't for the belts, I really don't. I didn't love jiu-jitsu on day one. I didn't love jiu-jitsu till I was kind of immersed in jiu-jitsu. I just thought it was a thing. But I had a goal to strive to. Would you go to college if at the end you didn't get a degree? What would you just go there for the knowledge? So the thing is, you have to have some reward, and lining up by rank is that reward for the higher. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Now, if you line up here, you get privilege of this. If you're lining up, here, you get that. Now we have a problem, right? So no academies really have that, but I would say certain other martial arts, I won't name any, definitely have hierarchy issues based on lining up by rank and where you are next to the instructor. I've been in some traditional martial arts where if you're closer to the instructor, you can do this, and if you're this far from the instructor, you can't do that. So anyway, in jiu-jitsu, not a big deal. I think people should line up by rank, and yeah. All right. So, last thing, when a respect custom or tradition turns into a toxic or culty tradition, right? I think, by respecting higher belts, I think you have to be careful of certain things that can happen, and almost all of these things involve taking that hierarchy or respect off of the mats. You know what I'm talking about, Jim?
Yeah. Where you still, I guess where the idea that someone still wants them to address them as professor,
oh God,
or Mr. or Master or whatever the case, outside the mat. Am I correct?
Yeah, I tell my students exactly. It's similar, right? No, not similar. It's exactly, but there's more to it.
Sure. I
tell my students always, I don't even want you calling me professor when the class is not in session. I only have my students call me professor because, and this might actually change in the future, is because it in Portuguese it means like teacher, professor, right? It means teacher. So it's a tradition. It's not. I don't think it's harmful. I am teaching you a skill. It's whatever. Now. I always tell my students when class is over, do not call me professor. Maybe in the academy, you can still call me professor or whatever. But if we're outside the academy, if you see me in public, do not call me professor. If we talk on the phone somehow, do not call me professor. I am, I'm your professor on the mats, right? And the only reason I even keep that tradition is because I don't want my students going to other academies and disrespecting somebody, right? If you call somebody professor, you can't really possibly disrespect them, but if you call them, Ben or their name or Jim, not knowing, it could be disrespectful, right? So one way, there's no way you're going to disrespect the person, or very unlikely, and the other way, there's a likelihood you can disrespect the owner of the academy or the black belt that's teaching. So that's why I tell my students, that. Right. So what we're talking about when respect kind of turns culty, right? So that's one way it turns culty, right? So let's say you're my student, Jim. You call me professor on the mats. You call me professor outside the mats. You respect me. You put me on a pedestal. Well, now you're getting to wash my car. Now you might, I'm going to ask you to come over for a massage if I'm into that stuff. So that's kind of these are things that they can start transcending off the mats if you let it happen, right? That's when things turn culty. I'm going to tell a very personal story right now, and but it is what it is. I had a black belt at my academy who was a predator, The guy was a predator. The guy would use his rank, his black belt rank, to how do I put this? Hit on younger female students. I had to kick this guy out, because it's predatorial. You can't. Why did these young girls fall for it? Because they were into the martial art. They had respect, and this guy, this black belt, was very manipulative and was a guy who, would always test their loyalty. He wanted to be the guy that belted them because, if I belt them, I'm gonna, they're gonna be loyal to me. And eventually I had to kick this guy out because it was a joke. It was predatorial and bad for business, and I couldn't ethically allow it to happen anymore. It took me a long time to come to that realization, and that's my mistake. But that is one of the things where the respect on the mat left the mat, and this guy took advantage.
Got exploited off the mat.
Yeah, ridiculous stuff. That's why when I hear certain academies have special parking spots for black belts, like what the fuck is that, man? Special parking spots. I don't even know where to begin on that one. What's another one? Just any special privileges off the mats, right? If I'm the owner of the gym and I want you to do something for free because I'm your instructor, that is when respecting higher belts has just gone haywire, right? I want you to teach my kids class for free because I'm your instructor and I want you to, I want to take advantage of you. That's basically what I'm saying, and so I want to make sure everybody that's listening to this understands that respecting higher belts should be you respecting them because of the work that they've put in, not you blindly being loyal to them because of a color, right? Bruce Lee said the best, the belt is for holding up your pants. That's it. In jiu-jitsu it means a couple other things, but for the most part it's just to hold up your pants or to keep your gi closed, actually. Right? So, I'm sure there's these types of stories all over the place where a higher belt kind of just takes advantage of that spot and it becomes toxic, right? So, that's the last thing. That's why these traditions almost always should never leave the academy, and if they do, be very, very careful.
Yes, totally agree. It can get a little tricky. Because let's face it, man, even in the art of jiu-jitsu, we do have unethical people. And that is the recipe for the exploitation.
That's why you can't rely on somebody's character or think you know them or anything. You have to have systems in place to prevent this from happening. If your academy does not have systems in place, guidelines, values, principles, etiquettes that stop this, then you need to be very careful.
Well, yeah, and let me just kind of stop you right there. Yeah. Well, I don't need to stop you. You got it out. But, okay, and that's what we're talking about. That's what this whole larger discussion is, systems.
Yes.
So the belt ranks is a system, and the principle, the spirit of the system is to show hierarchy, to have a rank structure.
Well, there should be a system that governs the higher belts. There should be a system there, just like I said with rolling near higher belts, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have the automatic privilege of saying, at least at my academy, I'm a higher belt, you have to move. Mm-hmm. Because
that's a system, though, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. Well, that is. I mean, not really. That's just kind of like that. That's a
structure. I look at that as a structure. It's a rule.
I guess you could say that's a rule, right?
So what we're getting into is spirit of the law, letter of the law.
Yeah.
Spirit of right. Yeah. Spirit of the law, letter. So.
Yeah. I mean, we're saying generally the same things, just kind of on slightly different ends of the spectrum, right? So I'm saying when you're getting near higher belts, it really depends on who was the person to leave their space, but at the end of the day, the higher belt still has the hierarchical advantage if there's a tiebreaker, and many times there has to come down to a tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. So that's that.
And these structures, these rules, academy culture, whatever you want to call it, it's essentially the equivalent of the outside world of a contract. like whenever there's doubt, default to the contract. Default to the rules. And the rules say, oh, I don't know, was I the aggressive one? Are you out of bounds? Oh, we're on the border. Let's just default to the system.
Yeah.
Higher belt.
What I meant by the system, too, is defining what is going to happen so it happens the same every time. What I think, when you think about traditions and customs, a lot of times they're expected. They're things that you're expected to do, but you're never, like, implicitly told. You know, that's where things get muddy, right? You're expected to move for a higher belt, okay, but nobody ever told you that. It's just like it's like a tradition, right?
Rodrigo sure didn't.
No, I mean he would
Right.
move for me. So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, people. This is again. People would tell me, "Hey, you got to move for Rodrigo because you got to move for a higher belt." People would tell me all the time, but he would never say that. He would
Exactly.
say it very rarely, and if ever. And so anyway, so I don't want to repeat why I got rid of that in my academy, but that's one of the reasons why I didn't like. You know, I didn't like, my students trying to be generals here and trying to, tell other people what to do. Let the system govern everything. We don't need more chiefs, So, yeah. All right.
There you go. So have we completed it?
I think so.
This is it. All right. Well, Coach, once again, thank you. Good take.
Yep.
And good takeaways.
Yep. One last thing. So right now, if you want to help out the podcast, if you want to help out my academy, I have a Patreon going on. It's patreon.com/Coach BZ. And really, it's optional. All my content's free. If you have, some extra bucks burning a hole in your pocket, then send it over because my academy could use it in the next 2 months. Me and Jim don't really have sponsors of the show. We didn't get into podcasting to make money, that's for sure. But any bit of support helps. And, just thank you for listening. Thank you for your time. And that's really all we ever really truly ask of.
Well, thank you, Coach Ben. And then you could also, he's always posting drills on his Instagram. So you can check him out at Coach BZ.
Yeah, I got a set of 10, I would say 10 sets of drills that is on my Instagram right now.
All right. So you can stay home, but you can stay sharp as well. And this is one method. And wherever you are, as you can see, we're practicing social distancing. I'm layered up in the mask here. And, be safe. But being safe doesn't mean you can't get sharp and stay on the razor's edge while you're at home. All right. Once again, Coach, thank you.
Yep. One last thing, Jim. Thank you to Power Blocks. They sent me a, what Power Blocks are, Jim?
No, speak on it.
It's like, you know those weights that you can change out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Power Blocks, I just reached out to them on Instagram. I say, hey, can I get a set? Because I can't order them. They're sold out everywhere.
Oh, wow.
So they sent me a set. It's beautiful. And Power Blocks are the best like interchangeable weights, like the weights where you can put it down and redo it, and it's now a 50-pounder. You redo it, it's a 10-pounder.
Oh,
you
those
redo
are
it.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to save space.
Yep.
And when everyone has to stay home.
Not a sponsor, but,
There it is.
thank you, Power Blocks.
All right. Well, thank you, Coach. And thank you guys for listening and watching or however you're consuming this. And stay safe. See you guys later.
Muscle Farm.
Muscle Farm. Shout out.